Real estate agent Maria Santos thought she was just documenting another worthless property when she found the hidden wall safe behind the bathroom mirror in Marcus Webb's abandoned Texas ranch house. Inside, among dusty documents and old cash, lay a platinum chain with diamond inlays that would crack open a 30-year-old mystery and expose one of Manhattan's most sophisticated unsolved heists. Santos photographed the distinctive chain and ran it through online databases, never expecting to find a match in a 1992 insurance claim from Goldstein and Associates Fine Jewelry in New York's Diamond District. The piece was listed among $1.4 million in merchandise stolen during a robbery that had baffled police for 3 decades. When NYPD Detective James Park received the call from Texas authorities about recovered evidence from their cold case, he thought it was a mistake. But the photographs Santos had taken matched the insurance records perfectly, down to the unique diamond setting pattern and platinum hallmarks. "This is impossible," Park muttered, staring at his computer screen. "This case went cold in 1993. How does evidence just surface in a dead man's house in Texas 30 years later?" But as Park dug deeper into Marcus Webb's background, impossible became inevitable. Military demolitions expert, present in New York during the early 1990s. Unexplained wealth acquisition around 1992. The pattern was unmistakable. Before I walk you through the full story, I just have a small favor to ask. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far this audience is reaching. Now let's get back to the story. The story of how that chain ended up in a Texas farmhouse begins 30 years earlier, when Robert Chen realized his world was collapsing. "Mr. Chen, we need to discuss your account." The voice on the phone was cold, professional. "You're 3 months behind on payments. Our patience is running out." Chen set down the phone in his cramped Manhattan apartment and stared at the stack of bills on his kitchen table. Rent, alimony from his recent divorce, his elderly father's living expenses in Taiwan, the gambling debts that kept growing despite his promises to Carol that he'd stop visiting Atlantic City. His $42,000 salary at Goldstein and Associates barely covered his basic expenses, let alone the $85,000 he owed to loan sharks in Chinatown. "Robert, you look terrible," Samuel Goldstein said the next evening as Chen arrived for his night shift. "Money problems again?" "Everything costs more than I expected," Chen replied, not mentioning the threats he'd been receiving from people who didn't accept excuses about immigrant family obligations. That's when he started noticing the pattern. Working nights at the Diamond District's most prestigious jewelry store, Chen had access to everything: vault combinations, security protocols, client lists worth hundreds of millions. Samuel Goldstein trusted him completely. The elderly owner often left Chen alone with inventory that could buy a small country. But something was wrong with the business. Chen started paying attention to the after-hours meetings. Men who spoke broken English, paid in cash bundles, and left with pieces that mysteriously disappeared from inventory records the next day. Goldstein would make phone calls in Yiddish. Then suddenly expensive items would be marked as returned to consignor or damaged beyond repair. "The insurance adjuster approved the claim," Chen overheard Goldstein saying during one of these Tuesdays. Night calls. "40,000 for a piece that cost me 8. Sometimes theft is more profitable than sales, you understand." Chen understood perfectly. His boss was running systematic insurance fraud, fake thefts, inflated values, phantom returns. Goldstein was stealing millions from insurance companies while Chen's mother was dying because they couldn't afford legitimate treatment. The realization hit him like a physical blow. If Goldstein could steal to get rich, why couldn't Chen steal to save a life? The idea consumed him for weeks. Chen began studying the store's security with an engineer's precision. Motion detectors positioned every 12 feet, vault timers programmed for 60-second delays, guard schedules that repeated every 72 hours. Everything mapped and analyzed with the methodical approach that had made him valuable to Goldstein. The building's 1940s construction had service tunnels connecting to adjacent structures, a legacy of prohibition that modern security systems completely ignored. Chen discovered these passages during a routine maintenance check, realizing they provided unmonitored access to the building's basement. Chen's cousin David ran a small fencing operation in Chinatown, moving stolen electronics and jewelry through a network of buyers who asked no questions. Through David, Chen met Tommy Rodriguez, a professional thief who specialized in high-end jewelry stores along the East Coast. Diamond District's tough, Rodriguez said during their first meeting in a dimly lit Lower East Side bar. Security's tight, police response is fast, and everyone knows everyone else's business. But if you got inside access, everything changes. Question is, how desperate are you? Desperate enough to commit felonies, apparently. Rodriguez introduced Chen to Marcus Webb, a Desert Storm veteran with demolitions training who'd struggled to find legitimate work after returning from Kuwait. Webb knew safes like Chen knew electronics. Every mechanism, every weakness, every way to open them without leaving evidence that could be traced back to specific individuals. Goldstein's got a Mosler double lock system, Chen explained during their second meeting, showing them photocopied blueprints he'd obtained from building maintenance files. Time delay plus manual override. I can disable the timer during scheduled maintenance windows, but you'll need controlled explosives for the manual system. Webb studied the schematics with professional interest. Shape charges, minimal residue. I can crack it clean without damaging the contents or leaving forensic evidence. They spent October planning every detail with military precision. Chen documented security protocols and guard schedules. Rodriguez mapped escape routes through the Diamond District's maze of connected buildings and underground passages, and Webb assembled specialized tools through black market military surplus, dealers who operated out of warehouses in Queens. The plan was surgical in its simplicity. Saturday night, November 12th. Goldstein would be in Miami for a major gem show. Maximum inventory would be on site for Sunday's international courier pickups, and weekend security would be operating with minimal staff. Entry through service tunnels, 15 minutes inside the store, escape through underground passages that had been forgotten by modern security planners. Chen would stage his own assault to maintain his cover as an innocent victim. November 9th, everything accelerated beyond their carefully planned timeline. Chen received a final ultimatum from the loan sharks. They'd traced his work address and threatened to visit Goldstein directly, which would cost Chen his job and any hope of paying them back. His ex-wife had filed papers with immigration services questioning his financial stability. The walls were closing in from every direction. There was no turning back now. Saturday night arrived gray and cold, with November wind cutting through Manhattan's concrete canyons. Chen followed his normal routine, methodically securing valuable pieces in the vault and setting weekend security protocols that would remain unchanged until Monday morning. At 8:30 p.m., he used his legitimate administrative access to disable motion detectors in service areas, creating carefully planned blind spots for Rodriguez and Webb. At 9:15 p.m., his accomplices entered through Prohibition-era tunnels that emerged in the building's basement. No alarms triggered, the tunnels weren't monitored by modern systems, and Chen had provided detailed maps of their route to the elevator that would take them directly to the jewelry store's level. Chen let them into the store through the service entrance at 9:30 p.m. Webb immediately began working on the vault while Rodriguez positioned lookouts and prepared transport containers. Chen maintained his position in the main office, ready to handle any unexpected communications or emergency calls that might compromise their operation. The vault opened at 9:45 p.m. using Chen's override codes and Webb's mechanical expertise. Inside were rare gems worth $800,000, estate jewelry valued at $400,000, and custom pieces totaling $200,000, exactly the $1.4 million that would later be reported to insurance companies. Everything went perfectly according to their plan until 9:47 p.m. Rodriguez accidentally triggered a motion detector that Chen thought had been disabled. The silent alarm went directly to the monitoring company, starting a 12-minute countdown before automatic police dispatch. They had to accelerate their timeline dramatically. "We got 12 minutes, Chen hissed, watching the security panel flash red warnings. They abandoned their careful selection process and swept entire vault compartments into transport bags. Webb used small-shaped charges to open secondary safes, while Rodriguez loaded everything portable into canvas bags they'd brought specifically for rapid transport. Chen began staging his assault scene. At 9:55 p.m., Rodriguez struck Chen with a carefully calculated blow designed to create authentic head trauma without causing permanent damage. They bound him with zip ties and positioned him in the basement office where responding officers would find him, maintaining the fiction that he was a victim rather than an accomplice. Rodriguez and Webb escaped through service tunnels at 9:58 p.m., carrying approximately 150 pounds of stolen merchandise in specially designed bags. They moved through the underground passages to emerge 3 blocks away, where Rodriguez's modified van was waiting in a carefully chosen alley. Police arrived at 10:05 p.m. to find the building apparently secure, but alarms still active. It took another 7 minutes to locate Chen in the basement office, providing the thieves with crucial additional escape time that allowed them to clear the immediate area completely. Chen's performance was absolutely flawless. Genuine unconsciousness from real injury, authentic confusion and disorientation, consistent story about thinking the intruders were legitimate transport workers from the courier service. Paramedics treated his head wound, while detectives began processing what appeared to be a sophisticated break-in by professional criminals with extensive inside knowledge. Detective Lieutenant Sarah Morrison took lead on the case. The sophistication of the break-in, the inside knowledge required for success, and the $1.4 million value made it an immediate priority case for the NYPD's major case squad. Forensics found minimal useful evidence. No fingerprints except those of legitimate employees. No DNA traces that could be connected to unknown individuals. No witnesses to the actual break-in. Explosive residue suggested military training, but thousands of Desert Storm veterans had similar knowledge and experience. Chen attracted investigative scrutiny due to the inside access clearly required for the crime's success, but his story remained completely consistent under repeated questioning. His gambling debts and mother's medical crisis provided obvious motive for inside involvement, but no physical evidence connected him to criminal associates or planning activities. Morrison interviewed every business owner in the building and surrounding blocks. Several mentioned seeing unfamiliar maintenance workers in recent weeks, but descriptions were vague and inconsistent. The Diamond District's culture of discretion and privacy actively hindered the investigation. Lloyd's of London sent specialized investigators who examined every aspect of the insurance claim with microscopic attention to detail. They found no evidence of fraud. The stolen pieces were properly documented with photographs and certificates. The security breach was genuine, and the theft appeared to be the work of professional criminals operating at the highest level. Police obtained warrants to search Chen's apartment, finding clear evidence of gambling problems and severe financial stress, but no stolen merchandise or criminal planning materials. His phone records showed no suspicious contacts beyond family members and work colleagues. After 6 weeks of intensive investigation, all leads were completely exhausted. No suspects emerged from the investigation, no stolen merchandise surfaced in known fencing operations, and no witnesses provided any useful information. The case remained officially active, but with minimal progress expected. Chen returned to work after recovering from his injuries. Colleagues noticed he seemed more withdrawn and anxious than before the robbery, but his professional competence remained unchanged. He continued handling his security responsibilities with the same meticulous attention to detail. The 3 men had agreed beforehand to separate permanently after the robbery, never contacting each other again under any circumstances. Chen used his share of the proceeds to settle his gambling debts with the loan sharks and stabilize his immigration status through expensive legal representation. Rodriguez moved to Houston to help expand his brother's legitimate jewelry business using capital from the robbery. Webb bought 640 acres of isolated ranch land near Amarillo and attempted to establish a cattle operation. Chen worked for Goldstein for another full year before quietly resigning and moving to San Francisco. He found employment with a technology company, married a colleague named Linda, who knew nothing about his past, and lived modestly in a small apartment. His financial situation stabilized, and he never gambled again. Webb became an increasingly isolated recluse on his Texas ranch. Neighbors knew him as a Desert Storm veteran who preferred solitude and asked no questions about his past. He built a modest house, attempted to raise cattle, and avoided human contact whenever possible. Rodriguez successfully laundered his share through his brother's expanding business, gradually converting stolen pieces into legitimate inventory over several years. The Houston operation became one of Texas's most respected jewelry retailers, with no apparent connection to the original theft. Webb kept several pieces from the robbery as insurance against future financial problems. Among them was a distinctive platinum chain with diamond inlays that had belonged to a European collector. A piece too recognizable and unique to fence safely through normal channels, but too valuable to simply discard. By 1995, the NYPD case was effectively dormant. Detective Morrison retired in 1998, taking crucial institutional knowledge with her. Periodic reviews found no new leads or promising avenues for investigation. The Diamond District implemented comprehensive new security protocols following the robbery. Multi-layered authentication systems, dramatically improved surveillance technology, and enhanced cooperation with police became industry standards that made similar crimes exponentially more difficult. Chen struggled with persistent guilt over his deception, eventually seeking therapy for what he described as work-related stress and anxiety. He never gambled again and became a model citizen, contributing regularly to charities and living quietly with his growing family. Webb's isolation and paranoia gradually took a severe psychological toll. He became increasingly reclusive and suspicious, avoiding contact with neighbors and rarely leaving his property for any reason. His cattle operation failed due to chronic mismanagement and complete lack of attention to basic business practices. Webb stored the stolen jewelry in various carefully chosen hiding places around his sprawling property, including a concealed wall safe in his house and several buried caches in different barns. The platinum chain remained hidden in his bedroom dresser drawer for 3 full decades. Technological evolution meant the case could potentially be solved with modern investigative techniques, but the critical evidence needed to be rediscovered first. The stolen pieces remained completely hidden on Webb's remote ranch, leaving no discoverable trail for modern investigators to follow. Marcus Webb died alone in his ranch house in March 2022, discovered 3 weeks later by a postal worker who became concerned about accumulated mail. At 67, he had become a complete hermit with no known relatives or close personal contacts. His death appeared entirely natural. Heart failure brought on by years of poor health, social isolation, and chronic neglect of medical care. Webb died intestate, leaving no will or specific instructions for disposal of his property. Texas authorities conducted routine evaluation of his 640-acre ranch, finding minimal liquid assets but substantial accumulated debts. The property would need to be sold quickly to satisfy creditors and cover burial costs. Real estate agent Maria Santos was hired by the state to evaluate Webb's ranch for potential sale. The property included a severely deteriorated house, several dilapidated barns, and grazing land that hadn't been properly maintained or utilized in years. Her initial assessment suggested minimal commercial value. While systematically documenting the house's condition for potential buyers, Santos found a hidden wall safe concealed behind a bathroom mirror. Inside were personal documents, several $1,000s in cash, and jewelry that seemed completely inconsistent with Webb's apparent financial situation and lifestyle. A platinum chain with distinctive diamond inlays caught her immediate attention. Santos photographed all the jewelry and began researching similar pieces through online databases and auction house records. The platinum chain's unique design and exceptional craftsmanship suggested significant value, possibly estate jewelry from a major auction house or private collection. Comprehensive database searches revealed the chain matched detailed descriptions from a 1992 insurance claim filed by Goldstein and Associates in New York. The piece had been specifically listed among $1.4 million in merchandise stolen during a sophisticated Diamond District heist that was never solved. Santos contacted local Texas authorities who initially seemed skeptical about a 30-year-old New York case suddenly surfacing in rural Texas. However, the jewelry's distinctive characteristics and clear documentation and insurance records prompted them to contact NYPD directly. NYPD Detective James Park, currently assigned to the cold case unit, retrieved the original 1992 investigation file and confirmed the chain matched detailed insurance photographs and gemological descriptions. Other pieces found in Webb's safe also corresponded to specific items listed in the original theft report. Detailed research into Webb's background revealed his military service record, specialized demolitions training, and confirmed presence in New York during the early 1990s. While entirely circumstantial, the evidence pattern strongly suggested direct involvement in the original theft, as the explosives expert. Armed with comprehensive search warrants, Texas authorities systematically examined Webb's entire property. They discovered additional stolen merchandise buried in various locations throughout the ranch, including rare gems and estate jewelry that had been carefully preserved and protected for 3 full decades. The primary challenge became connecting Webb to the original crime through concrete evidence rather than circumstantial association. The recovered jewelry provided clear links to the 1992 theft, But proving Webb's specific role required connecting him to accomplices or establishing exactly how he obtained the pieces. Modern forensic techniques allowed analysis that was completely impossible in 1992. Advanced DNA testing, enhanced fingerprint recovery methods, and sophisticated digital database searches could potentially identify Webb's accomplices and solve the complete criminal conspiracy. Detective Park faced the unusual situation of having clear physical evidence from a 30-year-old major crime, but extremely limited ability to prosecute due to statute of limitations laws and the primary suspect's recent death. Investigation focus shifted to understanding the complete conspiracy and identifying any surviving participants. Comprehensive investigation into Webb's background confirmed his presence in New York during 1992, military demolitions expertise, and financial records showing unexplained wealth acquisition precisely around the time of the robbery. While circumstantial, the pattern very strongly suggested direct involvement. Modern cross-referencing capabilities allowed investigators to examine thousands of records from the original investigation period. They systematically identified potential associates of Webb who had been present in New York during the relevant time frame and had skills compatible with the sophisticated theft. Financial records recovered from Webb's ranch showed periodic money transfers to Houston area businesses, including Rodriguez Brothers Jewelry. Further investigation revealed this business had been established shortly after the 1992 robbery, with completely unexplained initial capital investment. Phone records from the early 1990s, recently digitized and made searchable, revealed communication patterns between Webb and numbers registered to individuals with the surname Chen in the New York metropolitan area. Cross-referencing with Goldstein and Associates employment records clearly identified Robert Chen as a potential inside collaborator. Systematic analysis of Webb's property purchases and financial activities revealed clear patterns consistent with systematic money laundering through strategic land acquisition. The extremely remote Texas location suggested he intended permanent concealment of his criminal role and stolen assets. The stolen jewelry discovered on Webb's property represented approximately 60% of the original theft's total value. This strongly suggested either additional hidden caches existed somewhere on the property or other participants had retained substantial portions of the stolen merchandise for their own purposes. Advanced DNA analysis of items recovered from Webb's property revealed genetic material from multiple different individuals, including profiles that could potentially be matched to living suspects if they could be properly identified and located. Through investigation, prosecutors carefully reviewed the case and confirmed that even with overwhelming physical evidence, statute of limitations laws prevented any criminal charges related to the original 1992 robbery. However, possession of stolen property charges might still be legally viable against any surviving participants. Investigations successfully located Robert Chen, living in San Francisco under his married name Chen Wang. Now 66 and recently retired from a successful technology industry career, he had lived quietly and completely legally for 3 full decades with no subsequent criminal activity whatsoever. He had built a stable, middle-class life completely removed from his criminal past. Chen's wife and adult children were completely unaware of his past involvement in the robbery. Discovery of his criminal role would potentially devastate a family that viewed him as a model citizen who had successfully overcome early immigrant struggles to achieve the American dream. The Houston jewelry business, operated by Rodriguez's brother, was systematically examined for potential historical money laundering activities. While currently successful and apparently completely legitimate, its founding shortly after the 1992 robbery with entirely unexplained capital raised serious questions about initial investment sources. Federal agents approached Chen at his San Francisco home, presenting comprehensive evidence of his connection to Webb and the recovered stolen jewelry. Faced with irrefutable DNA evidence and financial records spanning 3 decades, Chen immediately realized that denial was completely impossible. After consulting with experienced criminal defense attorneys and understanding that he faced minimal legal exposure due to statute of limitations protections, Chen provided detailed and comprehensive testimony about the 1992 robbery. His engineering background allowed him to describe technical aspects that perfectly corroborated existing physical evidence. When directly confronted with Chen's detailed confession and overwhelming evidence recovered from Webb's property, Tommy Rodriguez chose to cooperate fully with investigators. His legitimate business success in Houston made him extremely reluctant to risk everything by maintaining silence about decades-old crimes. The three men's combined testimonies allowed investigators to reconstruct the entire robbery in complete detail, revealing a level of sophistication that surprised even veteran detectives who had worked hundreds of major cases. Chen's testimony came first, delivered in the sterile conference room of the San Francisco FBI field office. His engineering background showed in every detail: precise timings, exact measurements, technical specifications that could be verified against crime scene evidence 30 years later. The motion detectors operated on a 60-second cycle, Chen explained, sketching diagrams on a whiteboard. I disabled zones 3 through 7 using maintenance override code 4471, creating a corridor exactly 42 feet wide from the service entrance to the vault. The time delay on the Mosler system was programmed for 90 seconds, but I reduced it to 30 using my administrative access. Detective Park watched Chen's methodical reconstruction with fascination. How did you know Rodriguez wouldn't trigger alarms in other areas? I gave him a map, Chen replied, pulling out a hand-drawn schematic he'd kept hidden for 3 decades. Every motion sensor, every camera angle, every blind spot. I spent 2 months mapping the building's security grid during legitimate maintenance checks. The map was a masterpiece of technical precision, a detailed blueprint showing security coverage down to the foot, with carefully marked safe passages, highlighted in different colored inks. Park realized they were looking at evidence of one of the most thoroughly planned heists in NYPD history. Rodriguez's testimony, delivered via video conference from Houston, provided the street-level perspective that complemented Chen's technical expertise. Where Chen spoke in engineering terms, Rodriguez described the human elements: the fear, the adrenaline, the split-second decisions that could have meant the difference between success and life in prison. Marcus was shaking when we went in, Rodriguez said, his voice carrying the weight of 30 years. Not scared, excited. He kept talking about how this was the biggest score of his career, how we'd never have to worry about money again. I told him to shut up and focus. What was your role specifically? The Houston FBI agent asked. Logistics and transportation. I rented the warehouse in Queens where we practiced. Bought the van with cash from a dealer in Brooklyn who didn't ask questions. Mapped out 17 different escape routes from the Diamond District. My job was getting us in and out clean. Rodriguez described the escape in vivid detail, how they'd emerged from the service tunnels onto 44th Street, moved the stolen merchandise to a second vehicle parked in a garage on 42nd Street, then driven to separate safe houses in Queens and the Bronx. The level of preparation was staggering. We never left anything to chance, Rodriguez continued. Each bag of jewelry went to a different location. Chen's share went to a storage unit in Flushing. Mine went to my cousin's basement in Astoria. Marcus took his stuff straight to Texas. We didn't meet again after that night. But it was Webb's posthumous testimony, reconstructed from detailed journals found in his ranch house, that provided the most chilling insights into the robbery's execution. Webb had documented everything, not just the technical aspects of cracking the vault, but his psychological state throughout the planning and aftermath. Detective Park read excerpts from Webb's journals to Chen and Rodriguez during their final joint interview. November 10, 1992, tested the shaped charges on a similar Mosler system at the scrapyard in Newark. Perfect penetration, minimal collateral damage. The fear is gone now, replaced by something else. Clarity, maybe. Or just acceptance that I'm about to cross a line I can never uncross. November 12th, 1992, 11:30 p.m. It's done. 47 minutes from entry to final escape. Robert's performance was flawless. Even I believed he was a victim. Tommy handled the extraction like a military operation. I feel nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, just emptiness. November 15th, 1992. The news coverage is calling it the crime of the century. They have no idea how right they are. We stole more than jewelry. We stole our own futures. There's no going back to who we were before. Park pieced together the technical reconstruction using all 3 perspectives. The robbery had unfolded with clockwork precision, each man playing his role perfectly despite the unexpected alarm. Chen disabled the motion detectors at 8:47 p.m., 13 minutes earlier than originally planned, Park explained to his team. Rodriguez and Webb entered the service tunnels at 9:12 p.m., 3 minutes ahead of schedule. They reached the store level at 9:28 p.m., accessed the vault at 9:43 p.m., and were loading merchandise when the alarm triggered at 9:47 p.m. The alarm had been their only mistake, but even that had been handled professionally. Instead of panicking, they'd accelerated their timeline and still escaped with nearly everything they'd planned to take. The shaped charge Webb used on the secondary safe created a hole exactly 4.2 inches in diameter. Park continued, reading from the forensics report. Textbook demolitions work, just enough explosive to breach the steel without damaging contents. He knew exactly what he was doing. What surprised investigators most was the psychological complexity revealed in their testimonies. This wasn't a case of career criminals targeting easy money. It was three men driven by desperation who had executed one of the most sophisticated heists in history. Chen's motivation was clearest. A dying mother and crushing debt had pushed him beyond legal options. But Rodriguez's story revealed deeper complexities. "I wasn't some street thug looking for a quick score," Rodriguez said during his final interview. "I had a wife, two young kids, and I was watching my family slip deeper into poverty every month. The legitimate jewelry business I wanted to start needed capital. Capital I could never get through legal means." Webb's journals provided the most haunting perspective. "We tell ourselves we're Robin Hood, stealing from the rich to help the desperate. But that's just pretty lies. We're thieves, plain and simple. The only difference is we're stealing for love instead of greed." The investigation revealed how each man had rationalized their crime differently. Chen saw it as redistributive justice, taking from Goldstein's fraudulent operation to save an innocent life. Rodriguez viewed it as aggressive capitalism, using criminal means to achieve legitimate business goals. Webb approached it as a military operation, a mission with clear objectives and acceptable casualties. "What's remarkable," Detective Park noted in his final report, "is how their different motivations created perfect operational security. Chen provided technical access, Rodriguez handled logistics, and Webb brought specialized skills. None of them could have succeeded alone, but together they created something unprecedented." The reconstruction also revealed how close they'd come to being caught immediately. The alarm that triggered at 9:47 p.m. had been caused by Rodriguez brushing against a motion sensor that Chen thought he'd disabled. If they'd had 30 more seconds, they would have escaped without any alarm activation. "The timing was incredible," Park explained to reporters. "If Rodriguez had walked 6 inches to the left, or if that alarm had triggered 30 seconds earlier, this would have been a completely different story. 3 decades of investigation might have been avoided by a matter of inches and seconds." Perhaps most remarkably, the testimonies revealed that all three men had genuinely believed they were committing a victimless crime. Chen knew Goldstein was defrauding insurance companies. Rodriguez thought they were targeting illegitimate wealth, and Webb viewed it as a military operation against a strategic target. None of them understood the full impact at the time, Park reflected. They saw Goldstein as a criminal and themselves as taking money that was already stolen. The moral complexity of their situation made it easier for them to justify what they were doing. The complete reconstruction took 6 months of intensive investigation, cross-referencing testimonies with physical evidence, financial records, and forensic analysis. When it was finished, investigators had documented every minute of the planning, execution, and aftermath of one of the most sophisticated crimes in New York history. Chen's testimony revealed the desperate financial circumstances that had motivated his participation, crushing gambling debts, immigration pressures, and the impossible burden of supporting extended family on an inadequate salary. Public reaction was notably mixed between moral condemnation for the serious crime and understanding of the systemic pressures that had driven him to it. Rodriguez explained his involvement as a calculated attempt to escape generational poverty and provide dramatically better opportunities for his family. His subsequent success in completely legitimate business effectively demonstrated successful rehabilitation, significantly complicating simple moral judgments about his past criminal behavior. Detailed investigation of Webb's isolated life revealed a man who had been completely tormented by guilt and increasing paranoia for 3 decades. Neighbors consistently described decades of reclusive behavior, suggesting he never found any peace after the robbery, even as his accomplices successfully built new lives. Samuel Goldstein had died in 2010, never knowing the truth about his trusted employee's ultimate betrayal. His son, who had inherited and continued operating the business, expressed genuine surprise at Chen's involvement, but acknowledged the severe financial pressures that immigrants often faced in America. Lloyd's of London, which had paid the original insurance claim, chose not to pursue financial recovery from Chen or Rodriguez. The substantial cost of international litigation and the significant passage of time made meaningful financial recovery extremely unlikely, and both men had successfully integrated into completely legitimate society. Federal prosecutors ultimately decided against charging either Chen or Rodriguez with possession of stolen property, citing the extraordinary passage of time, their complete cooperation with the investigation, and their demonstrated rehabilitation through 3 decades of consistent law-abiding behavior. The case prominently highlighted persistent ongoing problems with immigrant financial pressures, predatory lending practices targeting vulnerable populations, and the desperate measures people sometimes take when legal systems completely fail to address legitimate human needs. Chen's story resonated particularly strongly in Asian American communities, where traditional cultural obligations to support extended family often create severe financial pressures that aren't well understood by mainstream American society or institutions. The NYPD officially closed the 1992 Goldstein and Associates robbery case with a formal notation of solved through evidence recovery and suspect cooperation. All 3 perpetrators were definitively identified. The crime was completely reconstructed, and the truth was thoroughly documented for permanent historical record. The stolen jewelry recovered from Webb's Texas ranch was returned to Goldstein and Associates' insurance carrier. Some historically significant pieces were donated to museums for public education, while others were sold to provide partial restitution to the original owner's estates where legally possible. Webb's 640-acre ranch was sold to pay his accumulated debts and provide funding for a scholarship program specifically for military veterans seeking education in agriculture or engineering. The remote property that had hidden evidence of a major crime became a source of positive community impact. In extensive interviews following the case resolution, Chen expressed genuine remorse for his deception, but explained how financial desperation had clouded his judgment. He established a fund to help immigrant families navigate financial crises legally, using his retirement savings to address the systemic problem that had originally driven him to crime. Tommy Rodriguez significantly expanded his Houston jewelry business to include a comprehensive program employing former offenders, demonstrating how criminal experience could be constructively channeled into completely legitimate opportunities. His story became a widely studied model for successful rehabilitation. Criminology researchers studied the case extensively as a prime example of how personal crises can motivate otherwise completely law-abiding individuals to commit sophisticated crimes. The unprecedented 30-year timeline provided unique insights into long-term psychological consequences of criminal behavior. The case became a standard teaching tool for cold case investigation techniques, demonstrating how modern technology could solve historical crimes through evidence that had remained completely dormant for decades. The case significantly influenced policies regarding predatory lending practices and immigrant financial support systems, as Chen's desperation highlighted how systemic failures could create powerful incentives for criminal behavior. Chen's story contributed substantially to ongoing debates about immigrant financial pressures and the cultural obligations that create stress in immigrant communities, leading to serious policy discussions about comprehensive support systems. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office created a permanent exhibit about the case, featuring the platinum chain that ultimately solved the crime and exploring complex questions about criminal motivation, rehabilitation, and the passage of time. Database improvements prompted by the case helped solve dozens of other cold cases, as proper cross-referencing and evidence management prevented other serious crimes from remaining unsolved for decades. Chen's wife and children ultimately supported him completely after learning about his past, understanding the impossible situation he had faced, and recognizing the exemplary man he had become over 3 decades of legitimate living. The Diamond District implemented comprehensive new employee support programs, recognizing that financial stress among trusted workers created serious security vulnerabilities that affected the entire industry. But the most jaw-dropping revelation came during Chen's final interview with Detective Park, 30 years after that November night in 1992. "There's something else," Chen told Detective Park, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something I never told anyone, not even Rodriguez and Webb. Park leaned forward intently. What do you mean? Chen pulled out a faded business card from his wallet, from a legal services firm that had helped him secure permanent residency. The money I used to pay for immigration lawyers and debt settlement? It gave me the stability to build a legitimate life. Without that robbery, I would have been deported or worse. Park stared at the business card in complete amazement. You're saying, I stole money to escape a cycle that would have destroyed me anyway. The gambling, the loan sharks, the immigration threats. It was all connected. One crime gave me the chance to become a law-abiding citizen. Chen looked out the window at the San Francisco skyline, his expression mixing relief with lingering disbelief. 30 years I've wondered if I was a criminal who got lucky, or just someone who made one terrible choice that somehow led to redemption. Turns out, maybe both can be true. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.